saw a snippet before of Anton De Pasquale getting pole position. Wait until you see the crashes virtually. They are bigger than ever. Shane Van Gisbergen alongside him. Row 2 goes to Scotty McLaughlin and Bryce Fullwood. He is a dark horse in this E-Series. Chaz Mostert has really picked it up. He'll be alongside Gary Jacobson. Then it's Will Davison, a former race winner at Phillip Island in championship terms. Andre Heimgartner, Jake Kostecki from position number 9 and Fabian Coulthard out of 10. The Monster Energy Ford Mustang of Cam Waters from 11. He'll have Jack LeBrock next to him. Lee Holdsworth and Scotty Pye side by side in 13 and 14. Then it's Nick Percat and Todd Hazelwood out of 15 and 16. Mark Winterbottom and Zane Goddard positions 17 and 18. Macaulay Jones, Davey Reynolds, who's dressed up as Super Mario this evening, has Alex Davison behind him, and so too Rick Kelly, who had to build his own simulator from scratch. And look at that, Jamie Whincup, who's won 5 races at Phillip Island, 7-time series champion, the most winningest driver in the history of the Virgin Australia Supercar Championship, is right down the back of the field. That's what I mean about these experienced drivers who are rookies when we come to this game. But the other thing that I mean too is watch the focus. They really are focusing here, because once we go racing, it'll happen quickly. These cars will start to appear on the grid. Bang, bang, off they come.
Wouldn't it be handy if you could do this in reality? If you could just have them avoid the whole formation lap process? I'm sure that Motorsport Australia and our race director, Tim Schenken, would be happy to be able to manage the cars in that way. So we are preparing now for a start. Our first ever race, the BP Supercars All-Stars E-Series. 9 laps of Phillip Island. On the pole position, 24-year-old Anton De Pasquale for Penrite Racing. We've got a range of angles to be able to share with you tonight, in and around and above the cars. Second row, look out for Van Gisbergen, who's been very tidy. He's racing from Auckland in New Zealand, and a great start. De Pasquale gets away nicely. Already Frosty's in trouble. He's gone to the grass on the run down towards turn 1. Remember, they have cold tyres. The cars are incredibly difficult to drive in these conditions for the first couple of laps.
A new way of racing, a new world of racing. As we get underway and get down to the southern loop, Scott McLaughlin gets the jump on our pole sitter, who's going to have a look on the inside at the exit down there of turn 2. He gets a little bit wide, Anton De Pasquale, and McLaughlin jumps at the chance through turn 3. Now watch this, coming up to the Honda hairpin. We've seen huge incidents here before. It will happen again. Already damage on the Shell V-Power Mustang of McLaughlin. Off goes one of the Penrite. That was our pole sitter. So Anton De Pasquale has a real handful in the first part of this lap.
I think Will Davison got in strife. Anton De Pasquale did. Andre Heimgartner's come up into second position here. Scott McLaughlin did a nice job on the run down towards turn 3. Both he and Anton were cranking sideways on a cold tyre out of there, and he's assumed the lead. Remember, he's already had success so far this season in the IndyCar iRacing game, where he won last weekend, which was pretty impressive at Barber Motorsports Park. He was 4th in the first round at Watkins Glen, and he's been focused hard on trying to get his E-Series game working. He leads at the moment, and he's got a hefty margin over Heimgartner. Then it's Fabian Coulthard. And in fact, I think Fabian may have now snuck up a spot. So we'll look and establish where some of the names are that were further up the top of the field. For example, De Pasquale's now showing down in 14th position at the moment. So that was a big moment for him into the right-hander at turn 4. Whereas you saw from the Virgin Australia Supercars Championship highlights that we showed pre-race, turn 4 is always a hot spot.
Andre Heimgartner in the Ned Mustang, car number 7. He's looking aggressive as well. So Shane Van Gisbergen is down to 8. So the front row of Van Gisbergen and De Pasquale suffering heavily in the first lap. McLaughlin's just kicked away a little bit here. He's got a gap of 1.3 seconds now over his DJR Team Penske teammate. So it's McLaughlin, Coulthard, Heimgartner, Waters, Jake Kostecki, Hazelwood, Nick Percat, Shane Van Gisbergen, Chaz Mostert and Rick Kelly making up our top 10 here. We've got a virtual pit reporter team standing by for us watching this. Chad Naylon and Jonathan Simon. Welcome, guys. You guys are all across this format of racing. What are you seeing so far? It's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, good evening, Matty. We are down here in Melbourne and we've got the perfect setup. I've even got Jonathan Simon with me, who's an iRacing expert, and we have eyes everywhere. And lap 1 was total chaos further back in the pack. The Tickford guys started essentially what ended at turn 4.
And it was Bryce Forward off the line who just had total wheel spin and went nowhere, and he was caught up in an incident with Lee Holdsworth. Holdsworth actually rejoined the track at Stoner Corner, so he's cut the entire southern loop and ended up in front of that lead battle. That's caused chaos.
Yeah, Will Davison, who was also in third, moved across, and that pushed Chaz Mostert over. Ultimately, it ended up scuttling the field down there at turn 4, which pushed poor Anton De Pasquale out, who was totally innocent at that time. So chaos in the opening lap.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Jonathan. We'll be crossing backwards and forwards to you throughout the evening. We've also got an expert parked in Queensland at the moment as well, our regular Virgin Australia Supercars Championship Driving Standards Advisor, Craig Baird, who's won a race here in a supercar at Phillip Island. Good evening and welcome, sir.
Good evening from the Gold Coast, the bunker. But yeah, certainly a bit of chaos. I think Chad summed that up really well. A little bit of chaos. We've had a few investigations. Young Nash here has been flat out replaying stuff for us, but no further action in the first opening lap. It's no one wholly or predominantly to blame, so let's play on and let the race play out.
And a lot of this iRacing sport, Beardo, is self-regulatory, isn't it? It actually penalises itself in a lot of ways. So hopefully, mate, you won't have much to do.
Well, we're hoping that, but yeah, they sort of accumulate points as we go through the race. So they get to a certain amount of points, and then they'll receive a penalty. It could be the drive-through in the first phase, and if it really goes off the rails for them, the next phase is a delete button. We disappear them, but I don't think we'll get, especially in a short race, we won't see something like that happening.
Thanks, Beardo. We'll get in touch again a little bit later on. Just on that topic, in terms of the incident points, they're graded through light contact, track limit variations, losing control, hard contact, contact with another car. If you accumulate 17 points, you'll cop a drive-through penalty. Accumulate 25 points, you get disqualified. Have a go. Whoa, was that Rick Kelly helicoptering off the bottom of the front straight as we watch David Reynolds, who's enjoying himself there at the moment?
Which you'd never say about Davey Reynolds, currently in 22nd position. He's right down the field, but he's having an absolute ball. He doesn't do a lot of this. He reckons the last time he actually did simulated driving was at Time Zone, you know, the old Daytona machine years ago. So he's getting a handle of it now and finding it tough work. Everybody seems to be behaving. When we had a practice the other night, they were all punting each other off. Not tonight.
Check this out yet. We'll have a replay of what happened to Rick Kelly here. So I was right. So he's turned it into a Jet Ranger, and it's gone about 100 metres into the sky. This would be one that would give Beardo an ice cream headache trying to work it out. Fortunately, Rick's okay.
He's turned the lights out of his bunker down there, though.
Hasn't moved a hair on his head.
So the timing monitor has Rick back up at the top of this race. It'll happen occasionally because there's basically an electronic process that allows the driver to whack a button and then it'll get him back into the lane. So your real driver leading the race is Scott McLaughlin, in a virtual sense that is. This battle here involving Anton De Pasquale and Gary Jacobson. So let's ride on board with the Penrite racer of De Pasquale up Gardner Straight. All the speeds will be exactly the same, around 285 kilometres on approach down here to turn 1, Doohan Corner.
Interesting to look over Anton's shoulder because he's adapted to this very, very well. He's only been intensely sim racing in the last couple of years, but he's done a remarkable job. And he's now climbing his way back up. He's moved to 10th. Next in his gun sights will be Todd Hazelwood. These guys are about 10 seconds from the lead. Remember, this is the shorter of the two races, and our next race at Phillip Island will be reverse grid. And one of the curiosities for me in trying to get the most out of the sim is trying to understand how to replace the normal inputs that a driver would have. So you don't get the same levels of feeling through the seat of your pants, through your feet, middle ear, and it's remarkable that you can still end up with the right amount of brake sensitivity, and that's something that Anton's got working for him. He grabs another spot now, so displaces Todd Hazelwood. So he's got that touch, and there's a group of drivers that seem to be able to do that. They can adapt to the fact that there's a lot more visual input and a lot less real input. There's Todd Hazelwood, and he's all cranked sideways. He had it full opposite lock. He managed to get it onto the grass and save it without a shunt, but he drops a few spots in the process.
And the classic case, exactly as it is in the real world, of getting under pressure. He had De Pasquale nosing past, and then in a flick of an eye, he had Gary Jacobson on him as well, and suddenly there's a quick mistake. So here's our race leader, Scott McLaughlin, 1.86 seconds now clear of Fabian Coulthard. Andre Heimgartner looked good from the start. He's third. Cam Waters, fourth. Then it's Kostecki, Percat, Van Gisbergen, Mostert, Di Pasquale and Jacobson into the top 10. Jamie Whincup, 13th position.
I spoke to Jamie earlier in the day, and at that stage he said, I've got 2 hours before qualifying and I'm still putting this thing together. So it was a short and sharp conversation. He's been a busy boy. It's not necessarily his cup of tea, but what an extraordinary set of real numbers are attached to this driver. He's 37 years of age. He's got 498 supercar starts to his credit for 7 championship victories, 4 times a Bathurst 1000 winner. And he's the top dog when it comes to race victories and pole positions, more of both than anybody else. 119 race wins, 84 pole positions, and he scrambled back at the back end of last year's championship to finish in third. Now this is a tight little bunch starting to brew up here. We've got Heimgartner with pressure on him at the moment, the NTI car from Jake Kostecki, then Nick Percat, followed by Van Gisbergen, Mostert, Di Pasquale now inside the top 10 in 9th. Gary Jacobson that you mentioned, Matty, is now 10th. Actually probably worth us having a bit of a listen if we can stay on board for a lap, because it gives you an idea of just the sensitivity and the sound, the look and the feel. So let's just ride and enjoy. He's the second youngest driver in the field at 20 years of age. He still managed to claw it back onto the race line when he got down to the right-hander at MG. Short shifts here as you would in a real supercar, and this is a great battle here in the Dunlop Super Dealers entry for Nick Percat, Brad Jones Racing entry, and Shane Van Gisbergen, who was super quick in practice. I mentioned all the different camera angles. This is turn 12, the final corner onto the straight where they'll build to 285 virtual kilometres per hour. And Van Gisbergen gets the benefit of the draft. He tries to plunge down the inside. Nick gives him some space. Gizzy gets the job done. Race face, Nick Percat, right-hand side of screen.
Shane Van Gisbergen is currently in New Zealand, so he's got a set up over there. Nick Percat at home as per usual. He was more worried about his internet connection, Crompo. He reckons he's got a shocking internet connection, but it's working beautifully for us here. Position 7 for Nick Percat. You mentioned before Jake Kostecki being just 20 years of age. So there are 13 20-somethings in the field. There are 11 30-somethings in the field. And there is one 40-year-old in the field, and that's Alex Davison. And funnily enough, Alex has actually had a sim for quite a while. He got it off his brother, Will. Will had to get one last week. So really interesting. Some of these guys are into it. Some of them do it all the time. Others, not so much, but they're all starting to pick it up now. Watch Shane Van Gisbergen. He's going to run out of laps in this one. But you watch him throughout the course of this evening. Wait till we get to Monza. He's extraordinarily good in this virtual racing.
He's at his mum and dad's place just outside Auckland at the moment. And even though he's adapted incredibly well, he said to me earlier in the week that I haven't actually taken it that seriously. I just, Percat got massively out of shape in the background into the final corner. Did he rescue that, or did it end up pointing in the wrong direction? I got a glimpse of him in the background there. So Shane, just for the last couple of weeks, has said, what's been going on? He said, I'm bored, so I've actually had to get serious about trying to get this thing to work properly. And he's doing it with equipment that he would not normally use. All of the gear that he regularly uses is parked on the Gold Coast. So he's using gear that he would not normally interact with. And it just proves that his eye-hand coordination still gets the job done no matter what. 3.16 seconds is the gap between McLaughlin and Coulthard, Shell V-Power Racing Team. 1 and 2 at the moment from Cam Waters in position 3. Mustang 1, 2, 3, 4, So Andre Heimgartner in the Ned Racing entry is next. Then it's a little gap back to Jake Kostecki, then Shane van Gisbergen, who we saw from Nick Percat, who got monstrously sideways at turn 12 a few moments ago. Then Di Pasquale, who's still recovering now, back up into 8th as we pick up on McLaughlin. He's got the grin going from ear to ear. It's because he's got a fairly hefty gap going at the moment. I'd be grinning too.
That's what I was saying earlier. Now we know. Now we know what they're doing underneath that helmet when they're having the time of their lives. Scotty McLaughlin is really having a good time, even though he can't go racing properly. He won the second round of the IndyCar iRacing Series, or the Challenge at Alabama's Barber Motorsport Park. Of course, he's a two-time Virgin Australia Supercars Series champ. He's won 44 races in that series. He gets one in the history books here. The first of the BP Supercars All-Stars E-Series winner is Scott McLaughlin.
A bit of gravel rush down the left side of it. He can afford to do this because they don't need to protect the tyres for the next race.
Fabian Coulthard second, Cam Waters third, Andre Heimgartner is fourth.
Scotty.
He may end up in Bass Strait if he does that. There's Cam, good position to be on the podium. And remember, this is a championship. There are points on offer. 75 points go to Scotty McLaughlin to claim victory in race 1 of the Supercars All-Stars E-Series.
So nice drive by McLaughlin, proving a theory that we saw earlier in the week in practice, that it wasn't just a fluke, that he was able to put together some strong performances and consolidating what we saw in the IndyCar iRacing game as well over his teammate Fabian Coulthard, who took us on a tour of that amazing kit that he's got. BP Ultimate results, Phillip Island, race number 1 in our 10-round series to kick things off for the BP Supercars All-Stars E-Series. McLaughlin, Coulthard, Shell V-Power Racing, Cam Waters for Monster Energy in the Mustang in third, Andre Heimgartner, Ned Racing next, and then Jake Kostecki, Shane van Gisbergen, Nick Percat, Anton Di Pasquale, Chaz Mostert. Beyond Chaz in 10th position with Gary Jacobson. In the second group of cars, Matty, we've got Will Davison over Bryce Fullwood, Macaulay Jones, Jamie Whincup, not a bad job, seeing he was still in assembly mode only a couple of hours ago. Zane Goddard, Alex Davison next, Chris Pither, Scott Pye, Todd Hazelwood, Mark Winterbottom, David Reynolds, who had a grin from ear to ear, Lee Holdsworth, Jack Smith, Jack LeBrock, and Rick Kelly.
Let's check out our koala race highlights. So it was Anton Di Pasquale starting from pole. You watch Mark Winterbottom on the left side of the screen there. He got about 100 metres before he went spearing off onto the grass. So Di Pasquale got mixed up. Van Gisbergen and Will Davison had contact. Clearly McLaughlin's had contact with somebody, but he took the race lead from there. There's Frosty into the fence. Oh, it was worse than what we thought. Jason Bargwanna did that years ago off the start line as well. Thankfully for Frosty, it wasn't as bad as this. I don't know if Rick Kelly's come down from this one yet. Davey saw it. He thought it was fun. And some pretty good moves along the way as those who came under pressure. A slight error, as in the main game. Slight error anywhere around this circuit, even in these lockdown weather conditions, will send you spearing off. So race victory for Scotty.
Late breaking news, just as we pick up on Scotty on his cool-down lap, and Tim Edwards from Tickford Racing has just said to me that Roland's been on the phone and all the Mustang drivers are now going to be using dial-up internet connections.
Slow them down.
Well, they can't complain about parity because all of the settings are locked off. They are the same for everyone, but it was chaos on that opening lap. Scott McLaughlin making the most of his opportunities to become our inaugural race winner in the BP Supercars All-Stars E-Series.